I just posted a topic online at the MLP, and something I've been thinking about for the past few days, and it just made me wonder, especially, when you have people, fans, if you will, that are kind of debating on certain ships and all that. I thought to myself, one of the most debated out of this is Spike and Rarity. Because some people have said that out of any kind of semi-canon ships or acknowledgments in the show, that Spike and Rarity are probably one of the most common. And I have to agree with that. But, as the title here says, and says the same with the MLP forms, the one thing is the one thing that really, what I'm trying to say is the one thing that a lot of people feel is very diversitive when it comes to that shipping of Rarity and Spike. Even Firebrand did in a flashback rent that they showcased in TF2 that he argued some other fans' speculation on them being together. Another fan by the name of Nightspear, the Bonetskit or something, but Nightspear, he talked about it as well. But again, the one thing a lot of people say kind of holds it back a little bit, and in some fans' eyes don't make it legit, the whole age difference. Well, this was kind of the catalyst to what this video version of what I typed up at the MLP forums is about. Basically, we're never really told how old the main six are. Now, according to some people that have already commented at the message boards, Lauren Faust basically acknowledged that the characters were like young adults, so basically being in the equivalence of 18 to 20. And that might be true. That very well may be true. But when one thinks about it, even though that might be the case, if you look at it in a way, like character-wise and all that, and I do apologize, my finger hit the mic there. If you look at it from different situation, basically, like who's the oldest to the youngest, then, well, as complicated as it may seem, seeing how old the oldest to the youngest could be, that would give you a pretty good idea as to why they act the way they do. And as far as Spike is concerned, this might even settle or at least simmer the debate a little bit, because because what I did is I went online and I went to these various, and I did some research, and I used an age calculator that you can find online that lets you know how old you are in animal years and how old animals are in human years. And now you might say, well, how does Spike come into play here? Well, Spike comes into play thanks to another site called, I can't think of it right now, but it's basically Amino is what it's called, I think. And from what I can tell, it kind of makes sense maybe in his perspective. Because when you look at it, when you look at it from a horse or pony perspective in real life, we all know that animals age quicker than humans. We know that with cats and dogs, it's basically the equivalent of 7 years. You multiply 7 by how old they are in human years. But when you take a look at, let's say, a horse, you can calculate that maybe by 3 or 9 or something like that. Or literally by 3. You multiply it by 3. And a horse be a lot younger and older than you think. Now, in Equestria Girls, it's no secret that the human version of the main six are probably between 16 to 17 years of age, and most notably probably juniors and seniors in high school. But with that said, it still doesn't let us know how old. It basically still doesn't give us an idea of how old the main six are as ponies. Now, of course, when Twilight went through the mirror in the first two movies and she came out a teenager, that could give you an idea, because her age equivalent could be 16 to 17 years old. But we weren't given that idea. But like I said, if you take into consideration using age calculators online to find out, then you kind of get an idea. You see, if you multiply, let's say, 17 times 3 and use that as an equivalent for Twilight in Equestria Prime, the Ponyville world, then you could pretty much, in a sense, kind of be like, well, you basically you multiply it, and you're like, she's probably in her 30s or her 40s or whatever, which would be a real life assumption. When an animal like a dog or a cat turns 8 years old, in human years they still may be young, but in their years they're now in their 50s. You kind of get the idea. So someone like Twilight, if she's looked at as a 17 to 16-year-old pony going into the human world, she would have came out as an older lady, if you catch my drift. But because she came out as a teenager, that kind of puts her at an age range as a pony between the ages of 5 to 4 to 6 years old. Because basically 6 years in human years equal 18 in horse years. Now, this is what I came up with. As far as the main six would go, as far as ponies are, Rarity and Fluttershy, in my opinion, because of the way they're portrayed and the way they act, are at least 6 years old, which would basically make them 18 years old in human years, basically adults. I look at Applejack as being right behind them, even though she seems to be just as mature. That might be because of the loss of her parents. She had to take charge. Applejack is probably around 5.5 years old, which would make her between 16 to 17. Now, Twilight, like I mentioned, when she went through the portal and came out as a human teenager, human world of Equestria, she was probably about 15 to 16 years old, which means that the pony version that went into the mirror and crossed over to the human world is probably 5 years old. Yes, that's true. Princess Twilight Sparkle is in the show, even though it's not really touched upon or acknowledged or even mentioned, is 5 years old. She is the fourth youngest out of the main six. Then you take a look at, let's say, Pinkie Pie. You might say, well, Pinkie has to be the youngest, right? She's the second youngest. Yeah, she's the second to last youngest because, in my opinion, even though Pinkie's wire is Pinkie is like a firecracker. Not a firecracker, but it's like trying to think. Well, yeah, she's like a firecracker that's constantly going off a firework, that's constantly being set off in a positive way. She may seem like that. She may seem like a wild and free spirit, hyped up on sweets and all that, 24/7. But she still shows maturity to the point that, but there are times in the show she still shows maturity and stuff, which in my opinion makes her about 4.5 years old, which would be equivalent to 13 to 14 years old in human years. As far as Rainbow Dash goes, I think Rainbow Dash, even though she's a Wonderbolt, even though she does her own thing, I would have to say is about 4.5 years old as well, but probably more so around 13 years old. Again, I know that sounds complicated, but the way I look at it is, if you want to kind of, in my opinion, look at how old the characters are by age, and just by the way the characteristics are. I look at Rarity and Fluttershy being at least the same age, which is 6 years old, in pony years or horse years, equal to 18 years in human. Applejack, I think, is right behind them at 5.5, at 5.5 years old in horse years, which would make her about 16 to 17 in human. Twilight probably is about 5 years old in horse years, which would make her 15 to 16 in human. Pinkie, like I said, is probably about 4.5, which makes her 13 to 14 years old. Rainbow Dash is right there at the same age range with Pinkie at 4.5, but more so at 13 years old. Again, I know that sounds complicated, but when you look at if you look at Equestria Girls and you, in a sense, count that semi-part of the canon, semi-part of the continuity, then you kind of get a better understanding. You kind of get a better idea of, oh, that's why she came out as a teenager and not as an older, older character, maybe about the age of the principal version of Celestia or Luna. Catch my drift? But then you probably say, well, where does Spike come into this? Well, it's like I said in the message board. From what I'm looking at, it's just an assumption of what the ages may be. It's not a fact. It's not a true fact. It's just an assumption. It's an opinion. But one thing I did say was this whole finding out how old they could be, assuming and giving an opinion on how old the characters might be. One thing I mentioned was it may also help explain the whole Spike and Rarity deal. Spike's age, basically Spike's age, as far as we know, is probably about 5 years old. Now, according to aminoapps.com and the Wings of Fire page and Dragon Years to Human Years section, which I'll provide a link to, if you times his age by 4, and he's about 5 years old, 4 years old at least, then you're looking at Spike being between 16 to 18 to 20 years old. I put down 18 to 20 in a sense. So around that range. Plus, if you add in, if you take into account the 3 Hearthwarming Tale episodes, or Hearthwarming Eve Tale episodes that we got, which equals, according to Wings of Fire, and even My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, 3 moons, basically 3 years, then yeah, you could be looking at Spike being between, you could be looking at him being between 18 to 20 years old. Because his first year would make him not 1 or 2, but it'd make him about 4 or 8. His third year would make him about 12. His fourth year would make him about 16. His fifth year would make him about 20. So you would have to look at it like that. And like I said at the message board, as complicated as it sounds. And I believe if you look at it from that perspective, it justifies this shipping that the show writers and the comic book writers tease throughout the show and the comics and the comic books, and basically why there's a decent amount of fans that support it. But again, it's just my opinion and my assumption. Take it how you will. But what do you think? Do you think I'm kind of on the ball? Do you think maybe I'm right about assuming the correct ages, or what could be the correct ages of the main 6 as well as Spike? Or do you think I'm off? Do you think maybe I'm looking too much into it? Do you think I'm off? Let me know what you guys think. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. I'll provide the links to the age calculator and the amino apps that I kind of found the information for Spike's age deal to be at. Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. I am out.